Hello, and welcome to Pivotal Moments, a podcast where we talk about the changes we make in our lives, whether it was a career move, burning everything down in order to grow, or simply deciding to start fresh in a new direction. We are all agents of change and have the power to pivot at any point, at any time. I'm your host, Melissa Robaina, along with my co-host, Siria Gutierrez. We are so excited to welcome our first guest, Megan Robaina. Megan is my brother and a trans man. First, we want to thank you for being here, and we are so excited you're agreeing to be our first guest. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you guys.
Yes, we are very, very excited to have you. And, before we jump into your pivot story, I want to make sure that we let you know this because I don't think you entirely appreciate the impact that having you as our first interviewee guest has had, but we wanted to let you know how surprised we were with your response in our guest form because of what you wanted to focus in on. And we basically were ignorant and we just assumed that you would want to talk about your female to male transition, that would be what you want to talk about. But instead, we were pleasantly surprised and pleased to see that you wanted to focus on the challenges that you faced within the medical community. And so thank you for that.
Yeah. I think that it'll explain a lot of other aspects of trans life, and it'll just serve as a really good example of a lot of different things.
Okay. So let's jump in. How did this journey start for you?
So I guess leading up to this, I can talk a little bit about how I found out I was trans, because that is then, the precursor to why I wanted to get onto testosterone. So I was with a partner at the time. This is a female. She was gay but cis, meaning that she felt like she was the same gender that she was born as. And we were considering what to wear to the next LGBT Pride in San Francisco. There's a lot of different pride flags. If you haven't seen how many flags there are, I would suggest go looking at them. It's immense. And there will be words that you've never heard of. You're like, what is pansexual? What is this? What is this? And so it's not just sexualities, there are genders. And I thought I was a female who was bisexual, very masculine. And there was more to the story, obviously, but that is just how I perceived myself. I didn't know anything else. And then my partner at the time, who knew I was trans from things that I had said and being very close to me, said, hey, why don't you check out this thing? It tells you, all of the colors and the flags of the different sexualities, and you can see which one you want to wear. Do you want to wear, just the rainbow, or do you want to wear bisexual colors, da-da-da-da? And so I read about it, and I was reading about different sexualities because I didn't know what they were. I was reading about different genders, but I didn't know what they were. And I came across someone who is bigendered. I was like, what does that mean? Bigendered. I looked it up. It was someone who feels like both a man and a woman at different times. Like they can at times be like, I feel woman, no man at all, or just a woman. And then at other times they feel like a man, not a woman, just a man. And I was like, whoa, I thought that was what it kind of meant to be bisexual, because I was bisexual and I felt like a man sometimes, a lot of times actually. And I told that to my partner. My partner laughed. She's like, no. Bisexual means you find sexually attractive both men and women. It has nothing to do with how you feel about yourself. What? Mm-hmm. Whoa, wait, what? And, upon further reflection, I realized that I was a trans man. I felt like a man 80 to 90% of the time, that I couldn't, hearing that, I couldn't get it out of my head. I couldn't, it has nothing to do with the way you feel about yourself, then what the fuck am I feeling? And
before that, you hadn't had an opportunity to reflect on that, right? Like, how do you feel about yourself?
No, well, because I think this is a really big issue, is that if you don't find out how you feel about almost everything, society will fill it in. And society filled in that I was a woman because I looked like one and I had the anatomy of one, but I didn't feel like one. I didn't think like one. I didn't act like one. But that didn't matter. Those were things were sanctioned and told that they were negative and were, redirected into what people wanted a girl to do and say and be. But that, was never me. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. But once someone, I think we have like just preconceived notions. Like, what does it mean to be trans? I'm sure you guys have like preconceived notions of what you might expect someone who is trans would feel like. But that's not true until someone who is trans actually explains it. And so I thought being bisexual meant you felt like both a male and a female, and that's why you were attracted to both. And that's not it at all. Being bisexual, you're just one gender, and you like both men and women. And I was really struggling for a long time with the part of me that did feel like a woman, because I was like, what does that mean? I'm just feminine. There's part of me that's feminine. I'm not a girl, but I'm feminine, and that's okay. But anyway, so that's pretty much how I found out that I was trans, was just literally looking up and researching things that words I hadn't known, genders and sexualities I didn't understand. And from hearing how others felt, it matched how I felt in ways that, feelings are kind of hard to make into words sometimes. They're hard to give definition to, but you feel them. And then when someone puts words to that, instantly, that's exactly how I feel. I know that feeling. I feel it.
Now, let me jump in here real quick. So
Yeah.
I know you and Melissa are about 12 years apart, right, in age. Mm-hmm. And so did you also grow up in Visalia, or did you grow up in, that's like a smaller rural area in California, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I didn't know any trans people. I had not met one trans person. Being trans was talked about with derogatory words like tranny or transvestite, cross-dresser, not the same things. Different words that just completely, removed these people from like normal everyday, society. And it's like only talked about them by the negative stigma that they were characterized by, but that's not true. So it wasn't necessarily that I disliked myself for being trans, but that I was completely ignorant to my own feelings, because the people around me were completely ignorant to my feelings. Like, upon further reflection, I used to like admire the way that my dad looked, just like not like sexually, but like I liked his shoulders. I liked my dad's chest. I liked the way I always wanted my body to look like my dad's.
I've seen pictures of your dad. He's a handsome guy.
I always just wanted to look like my dad. I had nothing. It wasn't weird. It was like just the admiration, like a son to a father, or a daughter to a mother. Like, oh, I want my hair to be long like my mom's. I want my, just whatever. It was that kind of like childhood. But upon further reflection, nobody in my life was even remotely versed in different sexualities or different genders. They were just, small town folk. And so I think that is why, exposure is so important, because if I had just known one trans person, if I had just heard one trans person speak, been in a room where that trans person was treated like a person and not like, like a subhuman, I might have been able to understand my feelings better, but I had no idea, and nobody around me did either. So I'm really excited to be able to share this with you guys, so that maybe other people that are going through the same thing can shed light on like a dark part of themselves. So how that led up to me having the discrimination in the medical community was that one of the hoops that society makes trans people jump through is to get a psychiatry note from a psychiatrist to take to your doctor to just get the prescription itself. If you want surgeries, you need more psychiatry notes, more doctor's notes. I have to change my name. When I changed I'm in the process of changing my name and my gender, and it's $435. It's like several court appeal. Like I have to go file it and then come back, and within 30 days file for a birth certificate. And one of the major hoops that they make us jump through in the beginning is just getting a psychiatry note. So I had to go see someone I didn't know and talk to them about my mental culpability and my emotional stability, and whether or not I could handle an experience, one, that I've never had before. So how could I fucking possibly know? But two, know that I was ready to make this decision, as if anybody asking to make that decision isn't ready to make that decision. So
and how long is that process? How long is that initial process?
So it depends. It depends on where you live. I'm in California, so my process is relatively fast. Whereas I know other people, their psychiatrists wanted to meet with them for like 6 months or something like that before they were able to really write them with confidence a note of for testosterone. And basically what they're doing is just diagnosing you as transgender. There's a word for it in the medical community, but I'm not even going to use it because it's bullshit.
Is that the gender dysphoria diagnosis?
Yeah, the gender dysphoria.
That's
Fuck
in
that.
and
That's stupid.
I completely agree with you, because I mean it's in the DSM-5, which, if some of you guys don't know, that's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that the medical community uses to diagnose people. And so there they say you have to, get that diagnosis of that term before you can move forward in that process, is my understanding.
Correct. So you basically have to say, I'm mentally disabled. I'm right. Mentally unfit. And thus I need this medication. Yes. So that within itself is just demoralizing, knowing that to get what I need medically, and that I have to basically say I'm unfit, mentally. Go ahead.
Is that a term that you think cis people should avoid using, and that the medical community should stop using?
Yes, 100%, because dysphoria is not what it's about. I would say it's like the incontinuity of your gender. It is not confluent, if that makes sense. It's not that I didn't hate my body. I was an athlete. I loved sports. Not that to be, a man, you got to like sports. I fucking love sports. That's what I did. And I had a really nice body. I looked good for a woman. I was just super uncomfortable. And I could never explain it to people. I'm not insecure. I don't think I look bad. I am just so fucking uncomfortable, and I don't know how to make myself comfortable. So I think dysphoria is a really wrong word to use, because some people feel that. Some people look at themselves and it's hard to reconcile that they are not who they should be, and they look at their body with dysphoria or hate. I understand that. I didn't do that, but that doesn't mean. But I don't think that characterizes what it means to be transgender, and why you should get on testosterone should not be, self dysphoria of the body. It should be like dysphoria of the mind. Like, you're not happy. You're not who, like, emotionally now, I am so much more stable than I was before. It's night and day. And I just think that dysphoria had so little to do with my discontent. It added a drop in the bucket. Sure, I'd like a penis. Sure, I'd like pecs. Yeah, I would like that. But I would also like my feminine emotions to not be there, because they overshadowed masculine thoughts. And when your thoughts and your emotions don't match, you have this dissonance. And so I would hope that cis people could see that dysphoria is a very rudimentary term for the feeling.
All right, welcome back. Thank you again, Megan, for being here. We took a bit of a break here, and during the break, you'd mentioned something about how you had been trans for the last 3 to 4 years. And I was wondering, is it that you just had the language of saying you're trans for the last 3 or 4 years, or have you been trans longer?
I would say that, yeah, so that was probably not the right way to say that. I like to call when I refer to myself pre-transition, that's what I say. It's like, oh, when I was pre-transition, not when I was a girl, not when I was female. And that comes again with just the culture that we live in doesn't have words for this type of thing. So it's okay. And I'm glad that you brought it up. Because even me, myself, as a trans person, can say things that don't necessarily represent the trans situation as it actually is, because language can be difficult to describe those things. So I have been trans my whole life. I've been a man my whole life, and I mean that I realized I had my trans realization about 4 years ago. And then from then I started using he, him pronouns. And but it wasn't until about 2 years after that I was able to actually formally get on testosterone and start injections.
Okay. And so that's really what you'd wanted to talk about, right? Was that experience that you had. So go ahead and tell us, what happened.
So my pivot moment was when I met with the psychiatrist for the third time. The first 2 sessions went well. It was awkward. I was uncomfortable, going to see a psychiatrist and talking, but it was all right. I felt better afterwards, having, talked about things I hadn't talked about in a while, like everybody does. And then the third session was when she said that she would feel comfortable enough knowing me and knowing my emotional capacity to be able to write me a note.
And that note was for the testosterone, right?
Yeah, the testosterone prescription. And so an easy way that doctors can, make the process easier for trans people is by giving them a template, basically, to take to their psychiatrist, so that when the psychiatrist feels comfortable to write them, they know exactly the medical lingo that needs to be and how it needs to be written, so that when given to the doctor, it'll pass for insurance and everything will go smoothly. So I brought that template in, and she had it. She had overlooked it. She knew exactly what she needed to write, and so she asked me questions regarding it, and it was a much more specific session. And towards the end, she said something transphobic. And I want to be clear that transphobia doesn't have to be aggressive or threatening. It doesn't need to be overtly negative. It can just be describing the trans experience inaccurately. It can be skewing it or biasing it, or making it fit into what you think it should fit into. That can be also considered transphobic. And this person told me that my gender was my own. And I don't think that it was kind of, if I'm honest, a little disrespectful to the entire process that I was going through with this person. My gender is not my own. My gender, by definition, is how other people, the culture, decides to see me. It's not my own. I don't control how others view me. I don't control what society says is male or female. That's not in my control. So to say that my gender was my own, it was just inaccurate and skewed, and seemed like a portrayal by someone who didn't really understand the issues that a trans person goes through. So I thought, being respectful in the way that I replied, that I could kindly tell this person that's not true. If my gender was my own, I wouldn't really be here. I wouldn't need to feel the need to and I don't mean that wholly, because there are reasons why I wanted to do this, because it makes you mentally change and fit more to who you've always been. But I also wanted to physically look like a man, because that makes it, in my mind, it coincides who I am, inside with the outside, just like everybody does. You dress how you feel, because, you want the outside to reflect how you feel inside. And, and so if my gender was my own, I wouldn't be doing that. And I tried to explain that to her. I even used like an analogy. It's like, well, that's like saying race is your own. You can't really say that because, that's how other people view you. And she got so upset. She took it really personally. She started telling me that I don't understand psychiatry and that, she's had years of experience, but she admitted to me that she had never worked with a trans person before. She got so angry with me that she picked up the template and said, well, I guess I just can't write this for you then. And I didn't see it coming. I was so blindsided that I didn't really have a response. I was like, what do you mean? As I'm crying. And I was like, what do you mean? There are certain things medically that you have, the boxes you have to check. Are they emotionally stable? Are they mentally stable? Do they know what's the things that are going to happen to them, and are they prepared for that? And she had already told me that I had checked all of those boxes. I had met all of those requirements. And so I was going to get this letter. And
she kind of held it hostage from you, right? In that moment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I think she like physically held the paper up and said, well, maybe I just can't write this for you, as if that would make me back down in what I knew to be true and what I knew to be the opinion of a trans person on trans issues is probably a little bit more knowledgeable than a cis person view of a trans. Okay. But that, whatever. I knew what she meant. And I even told her kindly, hey, I know what you mean. I know you're trying to tell me that I need to, create my own identity of myself. And my identity of myself is a trans man. But my gender is what other people see of me, and I can't change that. So I was really kind in the way that I talked to her, but she reacted so aggressively and violently and raised her voice and I said, I may not know anything about psychology, but I know I've seen many psychologists. I mean, I told her, I was like, none of them are supposed to take things personally. That I do know. That's like number one. You're like a mirror. You reflect. You don't take in and take personally what someone says to you in confidence. And so, yeah, she didn't back down though. She told me that, she said, well, I don't know what to say. I guess I'll just have to talk to my supervisor about it. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't have any control over this person. They had control over pretty much everything that I had been aspiring for, what I knew would make my life infinitely better and has made my life infinitely better. So I just looked her in the eyes and I told her that she should do the right thing.
Do you think she realized how much power she had in that moment?
Her eyes definitely said that, yeah. She looked at me with like the malice, because I think I was intelligent, I'm smart, I'm educated, and I'm well-spoken. And I think she wasn't ready to be challenged by someone like me, who was this fucking trans man challenging her, a psychologist who's, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And I think that she handled her mistake really badly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I can, and I know I don't think what the way that I'm saying it quite describes the severity and how much weight, this was all of my life. I had been uncomfortable. There was the best way I could describe to people, I was like, it feels like there's a glass ceiling and everybody's happier above this glass ceiling, and I can see it and I fucking want it so bad. But all I can do is look at other people enjoying their life. I can never feel that. And I knew once I had realized that I was trans, once I, started being treated like a man, everything started getting better in my life and I felt happy. And I knew that this was just one more step, the thing that would actually bring me more significant happiness and change and growth. And so like, I don't think that I'm really explaining the weight of what this woman did to me. But I left there without the medical letter that I deserved to have, that I jumped through fucking hoops to have, that I got treated like shit by so many people my whole life because I was trans. Like, I deserved it so much, and she didn't give it to me. And I don't remember driving home from that. I don't remember sitting in my girlfriend's kitchen and sobbing. I don't remember any of like the following days, but she ended up calling me. Go ahead.
What do you remember from those days?
Wondering like why, because I don't know. I'm not someone to sit and think of like, oh, the world is against me, or, why is all of this happening? But it seemed like maybe, like it was a pivot moment. Like there was some reason, like I was pondering why. I did think like I deserved it. It kind of reaffirmed that I didn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
There were times where I was like, damn, maybe I should just not do this. And then it was like, no, why would you ever say that? So I think it was a real big check on how much I believed in myself and my decision. And I did. And even despite it, I was like, well, it doesn't change who I am or what I need.
So how long did it take until you heard back from her? And what was her decision?
I believe it took only a day. I think it took like a full 24 hours. So I didn't hear from her until the end of the next day. But I don't know if I listened to because she called me, and I was obviously really nervous. I didn't want to I don't want to have another interaction with this person. I felt very vulnerable, like violated, basically.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so I don't think I listened to the voicemail until like the day after. I just left it. I was like, I'm not like, I mean, we all handle rejection, right? Like we've all dealt with rejection. But like rejection after like a lifetime of rejection, and after like going to someone you trust and then getting like ultimately trust and then getting rejected, that one really hurt. But I listened to her voicemail, and she did that thing where when people know they're doing something wrong, they act like they didn't know. They're like, now I've been educated and I understand now why what I did was really wrong. As if she didn't know in the beginning, but she apologized. She said, I'm really sorry for what I said. I talked to my supervisor and they explained to me that that was a really transphobic thing to say, that I was really out of line, and that I will be writing you your prescription and I'll send it to you in the mail. You should have it in about 3 days.
That had to have felt so good.
It didn't though.
Really?
It didn't. It did, but it didn't, because I knew at the end of the day, I was going to go to someone else and get it. If the worst comes to worst, I was going to go through the process and get it. It didn't make it feel any better though, because that it will never leave me. Like that moment, no matter how much I grow from it and come to understand how it's made me a better person, I can still feel for the other people that have to go through that and worse over, and like daily it happens.
And you had mentioned before we started recording about your strength getting you through, and that might not have been the case for others who have been trying to get hormone therapy, right? Can you go into that?
Yeah. So for me, it only took 3 sessions with a psychiatrist. For some people, their psychiatrist won't write it to them until like 6 months, a year. How insurance doesn't pay for psychiatry or psychologists like that. So it's money, and pretty much just deterring people from being able to do what they want to do because of like money. And not only that, but like the emotional strain of having to continue to go to like prove yourself basically to someone. You don't
in any other medical condition, you don't really have to prove you have what you have, but in mental, and I put that in quotation marks, mental disorders or dysfunctions, whatever you want to call them, they're treated like you have to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're depressed, you have to prove it. You know, if you're anxious, you have to prove it. If you're trans, you have to prove it. And it's I really don't think if I hadn't had the strength of will and thank God the support system that I did at the time, if I was in a different state where the stigma was even worse, if I lived in a family where I was silenced, I don't know how I would have reacted to that much rejection or that like level of rejection. So I think that, yeah, like just being just a really strong-willed person, I'm glad that it happened to me and not to someone else, so that that woman will think twice if she ever wants to hold that again, you know, over someone's head. She won't. I can be honest that like I thought really, really negative thoughts about myself, almost to the point of self-harm, but not quite so. But I knew that if I had been in a different place in my life, if I had been younger, if I had whatever, it would have thrown, I don't think that I would have been able to catch myself before I fully hit the ground, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that moment is what launched you into advocacy, right?
Yeah, actually, since then, I've, you know, all the BLM protests and things going around. There was an LGBT pride parade in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement here in like Eureka, California, which is like Northern California. And I went and I decided to be a really big part of it. So they had, it's really well coordinated. They had megaphones and stuff like that. So I grabbed one and I was like one of the people chanting the whole time. And then at the end, they had really beautiful, like people of color and women of color art shows kind of all over downtown, like pop-up art. So you could go see, hear poetry, stuff like that. So this beautiful Mexican gay man had like a beautiful poem he read, and then he left the megaphone open. A couple people spoke, and then I got up to talk. I had been like brewing from other protests that I had been to about things that I wanted to say, and I said them, and I had people whom I didn't identify my name, not who I was or anything. And I had people contact me through social media and were like, hey, can you speak more about this issue on my talk show? I'd really like to interview you, blah, 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 blah. And additionally, so I've done that. And then additionally, I bring trans issues and gender issues into cis male occupied spaces. And I think that that's really, really important. I think that just bringing it up, being unapologetically myself, standing up for others and being like, doing things like this, you know, telling my story, talking to other people in a way that might be like vulnerable or uncomfortable. I really stepped forward and felt like I understand now more why it's me, why I'm here, and why this is my story, is because I can talk about it and I can reach people. And like some people are alone and they can't reach people, and I'm not, and I'm lucky to be so. So I think this moment really changed my mind. I think I normalized a lot of the discrimination that I faced. I think I made it seem like it wasn't so bad. Like, you know, that was then and this is now. And it woke me up. I knew what I was facing was painful, but it woke me up. And I'm in California, in a very liberal place in California, and I can't imagine what other people are going through. So I won't pretend, and I won't be quiet. I won't be anything but myself in very cis places. I don't give a shit. And I think that this experience, launched me into advocacy, and like not just advocacy, but like self appreciation. Like I really had, like, it tested my merit and my knowledge of myself. And yeah, like who I am now, my life is so much better. My life is so much infinitely better now.
When you love yourself, it's funny how that happens. It really makes a big difference.
Thank you for listening. This brings us to the end of this episode. Join us next time when we finish our conversation with Megan Robaina. We want to hear from you. Find us on facebook.com/Pivotal Moments HQ. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR production. Thank you for listening. Remember, it's never too late and you're right on time.